Alright, so it looks like we have what is our final chapter for the year of MHA. And though it's a cool chapter, I do have some mixed reviews about this that I'm probably going to talk about at the end. But before we get into it, make sure you guys like and subscribe if you guys really like MHA, and I'm going to be covering a lot more other anime content. I'm covering Boruto next, and I want to start covering Jujutsu Kaisen. I kind of touched on it a little bit, but I don't think you guys saw that video. But if you didn't, I'm going to link it down below. But anyway, let's get into the My Hero talk. So we open up the chapter with what seems to be a POV, and we come to find out whose POV it is later, but by the text you kind of tell who it is. It says, "I'm almost there. I just need to give Tomura my quirk. My consumed consciousness will strengthen him, and the ultimate body will be mine." Looking at Tomura, the part of me inside of him went out without using the trump card. I can still win this. If I take Tomura's body, I'll be able to steal one for all. Yoichi, I need you. Unpleasant experiences leave a bigger impact, right? That's why I want to crash everyone's future. Yoichi, I want everyone to see me forever and ever. And as you can tell by the dialogue, we're listening to the thoughts of All For One. And it's kind of interesting that he mentions Yoichi in his dying breaths and that he mentions that he wants him, because I know that there's like a common thread, and the story even says it itself, that All For One only sees Yoichi as a toy. But the fact that he's so fixated on him and the fact that he has put all this effort into capturing his quirk really brings home my point that he actually loved his brother. He just didn't know how to express love in any other way. Anyway, I already made a whole video on that. You guys can go check it out. I'll also try to link that in the description. But let's move on to the rest of the chapter. So we see what we've kind of all been waiting for to eventually happen, that he's been mentioning for 100 chapters, is All For One is finally rewinding into a baby. He says, "I'm so close," and my god, he's still an ugly baby. And Bakugo, who's on his last legs, is kind of surprised that AFO has not vanished yet, because he's looking down at like, how the hell has this guy survived all this stuff I put through him? But Bakugo's also not feeling too hot, because he's coughing up blood, his body can't move. And he thinks to himself, I'm about to hit the ground, as AFO is literally screaming for him to move. He realizes he can't even talk, and he's thinking to himself, man, AFO is literally at death's doorstep, or should he say straight out the womb. But it's okay, he'll disappear in no time, so I think he's believing that it's easier to just let him try to fail on his own instead of actually stopping him here. But he remembers the words he said to Kirishima back in the days, and says standing through anything makes you crazy strong. So he wants to prove those words right, and he stands up anyway, despite him being in immense pain. Even to AFO's shock, he's like, close call, my victory needs to be perfect. Got it? AFO, on his last trump card, decides to pull out his mom's quirk, which technically I guess is the first quirk, and he shoots it right at Bakugo. And from the way the panel is framed, it looks like he hits him right in the head. But actually what ends up happening is Bakugo actually caught it with his teeth and broke it apart. And in that moment where he finally catches that attack, AFO, I guess his emotions get the best of him, because he says it right here, my emotions are getting the best of me. It isn't like me. No. And then he literally begins to vanish into a fetus, which they really did it. They really made Bakugo fight a damn fetus. And then we see inside AFO's vestige world, and we see that all the quirk factors are going back to the users. Psych. Because apparently that's not happening. Too big a fan service. And I don't know who's quoting that, because there's no quotation bubbles leading to anybody, so I guess it's just straight up Horikoshi trolling the shit out of us. Which, that's a dick move, man. And like that, AFO goes into a egg cell and he's defeated. Which, I'm going to talk about this at the end, because personally I like the fact that he got defeated by Bakugo. I don't exactly like the way they did it, but there also leaves a lot of conflict in the story that I'm going to have to address at the end. But for right now, let's just appreciate that AFO's finally out the story, because I did not like AFO. And Bakugo, in shock that this is happening, is finally like, ah, damn it, I didn't get to strike my All Might pose. Which, I totally understand, man. Everyone else got to do the little All Might pose, and he didn't get to do it. But he does a little slight fist bump on the ground right here, so kind of did it. So after that scene, we cut back to a few days before the battle, and we see Best Jeanist, and I guess they're all having a deliberation here. As Best Jeanist says, we need to defeat Shigaraki inside UA. We can't let him fray from the arena and set himself free. And we see the dude who looks like Sasuke from the Big Three. I don't know why his name's slipping my mind right now. He mentions, yeah, we'd be at a smashing disadvantage like what happened in Deku. Everyone talked about it. And Best Jeanist corrects, no, it's about their split personality and what we can aim to protect. Which I guess the split personality he's talking about at this time would technically be All For One and Shigaraki. Because technically Shigaraki does have a split personality, with him being Shigaraki and Shimura Tenko. but I don't think they are aware of that besides Izuku. And the other girl from the big three, who I'm gonna be honest, she gets like no screen time. I don't even know what her quirk is. But she mentions that we've already evacuated everyone you're talking about from the buildings, and Edshot adds, we no longer have the luxury to think about the buildings. The moment we decide to fight Dabi and Kamino, we turn a blind eye to the destruction. Protecting everyone's future will always be our top priority. Which, man, that's a kind of dick thing to say. It's just like, ah, man, yo, we let Dabi burn this place to the ground. Might as well just only focus on saving people now. And Mirko, in typical Mirko fashion, is like, just get to the point. And Best Jeanist adds, their mental conflict will be a problem. I'd rather deal with All for One. He wants to rule. He won't be killing in the masses. And Bakugo also adds, but Shigaraki won't stop until he's killed everyone, right? And Best Jeanist continues with, now that his power and hatred have peaked, he's destruction personified. He'll most likely target the ground itself. And thinking about the future, whether we get beat down, whether we stand strong, we'll need a place to stand on, and what we need to protect is the bunkers. And this statement itself is also another conflict I have, particularly with Shigaraki's plans. But again, I'll mention that at the end, but this plan is kind of dumb, to be honest with you, and it kind of contradicts everything he's done to set up this so far. But anyway, we get to see inside the bunkers, and we see some people crying and sad because their house was destroyed in all this destruction that's going on. And we actually get to see Izuku's mother, who's naturally worried because her son is fighting what seems to be the most powerful villain in all of MHA to ever exist. So naturally she's a bit worried. What seems like an internal monologue, and as we're treated to what seems to be the complete devastation of the city, we have Shigaraki going over his plans to destroy Japan. So he says, using decay to bore vertically, instead of spreading it through the surface, it will be able to destroy part of Shizuku, I believe that's pronounced, or Shizuoka? I don't know, I don't speak Japanese. But he says he could destroy it in an instant. And Japan has 378 square kilometers of land. It won't take more than a week for him to erase it off the map, which is actually kind of OP and kind of slower than I thought it would be. Because decay seems like it destroys everything in an instant. Like he destroyed a whole city in an instant. So, I guess that makes sense. But he goes on to add that there will be no way to rebuild it, and this will be a complete destruction. As him and Izuku continue their crazy powerful battle, and I don't know what happened to that whole big attack Izuku was planning a second ago, because it doesn't look like he's doing it right here. But he does mention that mixing Gear Shift, Fajin, Danger Sense allows me to keep attacking. I need to finish this. Shigaraki seems like he's finally realizing that AFO is dead, because he mentions that Master is dead, and it seems he doesn't really care very much, because he's like, oh, well, I guess he reaped what he sowed for not destroying that brat. But, in a way, I need to thank him. He made me stronger. Strong enough to match this speed. And then he actually touches Izuku right on the face. But in that same instance that he touches Izuku, it seems like Izuku also destroys his fingers. And he's not really surprised at it. It's like, oh, you got rid of my fingers in a blink of an eye, huh? And then we see inside of Izuku's vestige that we see Daigoro Banjo, and he's yelling to him, boy, Shinomuro-san is, and I'm assuming he means gone, because Deku immediately realizes that Danger Sense is missing. And then Shigaraki adds his final line, how long can you last? And we see that at the bottom, it just straight up says Danger Sense was taken. Now, when it comes to chapter reviews, this one has me, without a doubt, the most conflicted. Because yes, there's some really amazing stuff that happens in this chapter. I want to say based on the action and things that happen, it's maybe about like a 7. But there's a lot of things that happen in this chapter that contradict things that have also been mentioned before in the series. And My Hero has a tendency of doing that, and I know I'm a big fan of the show, but I have to call it out when I see it. I'm going to try my best to cite my sources here, because there's a lot of references and things that I don't think really add up here. But I'm going to start with the first thing. It's not really a big deal. I personally can see this going either way, but I figured I would just mention it here or there. But Bakugo defeating AFO, right? It is a little hard to believe that a dying Bakugo managed to beat AFO. The only caveat I could really give it is AFO is really desperate right now. He's not really thinking clearly, and he's not fighting to the best of his capabilities like he was earlier when his rewind started. And through the history of the show, it's kind of shown that AFO can't really fight. He tends to just do a big attack right off the gate, and hopefully it's big enough to knock out everyone in the area where he could then steal their quirk. All Might mentions this, and everyone else that has fought him is kind of shown a similar theme. So this isn't the worst, but the issue with this is that what is the point of setting up the conflict between Yuichi and AFO if it's not resolved between them? Like, they don't even get to see each other in their final moments, so it's a little underwhelming in that sense. But I'm a big fan of Bakugo defeating AFO, but I can understand why the fans or whoever the anime watchers might potentially not like this. I guess you could say it does do justice to all the people who fought valiantly to stop AFO, that Bakugo's efforts didn't just, amount to nothing because he ended up getting his quirk to Shigaraki anyway. But it was kind of like a Chekhov's gun, why mention it if it's not going to happen, so it was a little weird in that sense, but I'm not going to hate on it too much. Now, as I said, not the worst thing for me, I still personally like it, but yeah, it's a little messy. Now the next thing, I think this is a little bit more confusing because it brings into question what are the point of vestiges if it's not relating to the quirk. Because if AFO mentions that the quirk inside Shigaraki is basically dead or it's gone or he can't sense it anymore, then how is Shigaraki still able to use his quirk? And also, why would using the copy version of his quirk override Shigaraki's personality more than the original would? Because you would think the original version of the quirk would be his personality to the max, so why would the copy have enough to override his personality, especially when he's in a baby form? But he's also a baby, so how the hell can he even have this thought? But anyway, this does bring into question what are the point of the vestiges then, because you would assume the vestiges were the quirk itself, and at the end of the chapter, you see that when Shigaraki steals Danger Sense, the vestige in Deku goes to Shigaraki. So that means the vestige and the quirk are connected. So if the vestige is destroyed, how is the quirk still able to be used? I don't know, that one is a little janky for the most part. And let's not forget that when he actually takes New Order, he can't use it because the vestige dies before he can actually inherit the quirk. The only thing I could really say that kind of explains it is that maybe he doesn't mean that the quirk was killed, maybe he just means it's really, really deep down inside of him, like in that scene where AFO was eating all the quirks when his quirk started to rebel against him. And maybe a part of AFO is still in him, so maybe we could actually see that clash between Yoichi and AFO for the final scene, because again, they've built this up since like the start of the manga. It kind of sucks to not see them clash in any way or form, and it is cool that Bakugo got to defeat AFO because there's so much history between them, but it's not as much history as him and Yoichi. Maybe there's potential for this to come back up later, as I said. The last thing I want to mention, and it's going to be kind of 2 points in one, but this scene where Shigaraki touches Deku's face has a lot of things that kind of contradict itself and don't really add up to me. So first of all, why doesn't Shigaraki just kill Deku in this moment? He doesn't need One for All, because that was always AFO's main objective, was to get One for All. Shigaraki never cared about getting Deku's quirk, so why not just kill him in this moment? Why does he need to take this quirk? And besides Deku, no one else can challenge him. Plus, even if they could, they're really injured right now. So Shigaraki could very easily take on any potential challenger that comes his way. So why not just straight up kill Deku in this moment? Because Deku is easily his number one obstacle. Like, maybe there's potentially some more dangerous threats across the seas, but Deku's his number one obstacle, so why not just get rid of him off the board as a whole? Because no other character in the series could really challenge someone to the level of Shigaraki. And the next point that kind of connects with that point is, how is he even able to steal Danger Sense? Because from what we've seen, Danger Sense and all the other quirks that operate inside One for All are all part of One for All. They're not one separate quirk. Because using their same cup analogy, the reason why Deku's body is not getting destroyed from holding the power is because he didn't have a quirk. So when you have two quirks, the cup overflows. When you have no quirk, it essentially just fills your cup up normally. So what that essentially meant was that was just the power of one quirk that has developed several other aspects of the quirk, like how Todoroki's quirk works, where it's technically two powers, but it's one power inside of him. You couldn't steal Shoto's fire power without also stealing his ice power. Now, the only explanation I could potentially say to this is maybe he's stealing parts of One for All, because he can't take it all at once, because according to All for One, the only way he would be able to steal this was with both of their vestiges combined with that hatred. And while I'm at it, I also don't understand Shigaraki's plan, because Shigaraki wants to just destroy all of Japan, which I thought maybe he just wanted to destroy the society and kill all the heroes, which made a lot of sense. But him wanting to just destroy Japan and turn it to rubble doesn't really add up, because like, why did all the League of Villains follow you? Because they didn't want the city to be rumbled, because the way he's describing it, it just sounds like it's going to be completely unlivable by the time he's done. So all his friends and all the League of Villains that joined him, and all those moments that we showed they're actually true friends and they actually care about each other, was it all just BS? Because it doesn't seem like any of them care about each other. Because during this whole war arc, they are only focused on themselves, except for really Toga and the lizard dude, whose name is slipping my mind right now. And I know technically all his friends for the most part are dead or incapacitated, but he doesn't know that. He's been fighting Deku and the students at UA this whole time. I don't think he's aware that all his friends are gone. So that means this was potentially his plan from the start, which again, why would all the League of Villains follow him if his plan was just total devastation and total destruction? Because they want destruction, don't get me wrong, but they don't want destruction to that level. So if they knew that was his plan from the get-go, why would they follow him? Because that's not what they want. Also, this plan would leave them essentially homeless anyway, so why would they follow that plan? It doesn't make any sense. And that goes double for the Paranormal Liberation Front, because they followed Shigaraki because they believe that he wanted to live freely, where they would have a society where they could use their quirks openly and not be judged. So why would they still follow Shigaraki if his plans were just to have total devastation? Unless that was something he kept to himself and no one really knew about it. So I don't know, those little things kind of brought me out of the chapter. Man, this story is usually so good with keeping track of this canon, but it seems like after the war arc, they kind of threw a lot of big canon points and plot points just like right out the window. And there's constantly times where they're forgetting their own canon or forgetting things they set up. And they have a tendency of setting things up and it just having no payoff. Like Edshot was supposed to be dead when he revived Bakugo, but he's fine. They foreshadowed Deku breaking his arms forever ago, but he's fine. They said Deku wasn't supposed to be unable to move after the first time he used Gear Shift, but he's used it like 3 times now since then, and he still hasn't needed to take a break. And my last big complaint, and this is just a complaint about the series as a whole, or at least the war arc, because it's not really exactly with this chapter, but this chapter is kind of added to it a little bit. But why do they keep making Shigaraki so damn powerful? Like, he's already got super regeneration, super strength, he can infinitely regrow his arms, he now has danger sense, he can withstand any damage thrown his way, and Deku hasn't even fully mastered his quirk yet, and he's already losing quirks before he could even master all his current quirks. So you're saying that Deku is supposed to beat this guy somehow, and it feels like at the end he's just going to come down to unlocking some super special thing about his quirk, which goes against the original canon that his body will get destroyed if he doesn't master his quirk right away. And they've kind of given Deku no time to even the playing field, even just a little bit. Because I think even 100% Deku could still have a reasonable fight against Shigaraki. Because I constantly hear this and it's totally wrong, but Deku is not at 100%. He's still only at 45% of his quirk, potentially at 50%. Because he mentions it himself that he's still only using pseudo 100%. He's not actually at 100%. And just to clarify it even more, in chapter 349, when he's flying back to the base, and he can't grab a hold of anything with Black Whip, he mentions that the fake 100% can do the trick, but because he doesn't have anything to grab hold on, he's still only able to fly at 40% mixed with Fajin. And with Gear Shift, it puts him at an extra 20% on top of that. So he's still not even fully mastered his powers, which maybe he could be strong enough to one-shot Shigaraki when he gets there, but seeing as Shigaraki's going on the offensive of stealing his quirks, it might not pan out that way. The only thing that can maybe rectify this is that the vestiges he steals end up rebelling against his quirks like they did with All For One, and it ends up working against him to actually steal all these quirks. Because, like Hawk said in the previous chapter, the hatred makes it harder for him to use his quirk, and Shigaraki for the most part doesn't use any of the quirks that are in One For All, he mostly just uses the amped up body. So maybe with all the quirks that he's stealing, they end up destroying his body from the inside like they did against the Star and Stripe fight. But that's the only way I could see this being even, because Deku now randomly mastering 100% of his quirk would seem a little bit unrealistic in this situation. But it is anime again, the protagonist is supposed to have this odds stacked against him, and they're supposed to be able to overcome these like pressing odds, but so far it looks like Deku doesn't really have anyone left that's available to help him, and the ones that are available to help him, the status of their condition is kind of unknown, but for sure all the heavy hitters are out of the way. I think the only ones he's left with are all the people at UA, which would be, I guess, Monoma, Gentle Criminal, Shirakumo, Aizawa, and President Mike, if they ever come back into the story, because I think that they've just upright forgot about him. But maybe they'll talk about it in the next chapter, because they're definitely about to cut away soon. But yeah, I think that's really the only people that can help him at this point. But the status of how they are after the Sad Woman's Parade is still yet to be determined. Who knows if any of them are still alive, or how much damage they sustained while the Sad Man's Parade, or Sad Woman's Parade was still going on. But anyway, sorry for my long rant. I could already smell the comments on this one of everyone saying I'm wrong. And I think that's totally fine. I get that, like, this might not be the popular take. I just know it's stuff that I've noticed throughout reading the war arc, that there's a lot of inconsistencies in the writing, and a lot of times they bring things up and then they'll follow up on it, or a lot of times they allude to something and then they do the opposite. And it's just, it's hit a boiling point in this chapter for me. I don't hate this chapter. I do think it's still a pretty well done chapter. But yeah, all that stuff kind of, like, you know, is one of the main gripes I have with the war arc. But besides that, still a solid chapter. If everyone loves this, I totally am fine with that. If people don't like this, feel free to leave your comments below. Honestly, feel free to leave your comments below either way. But thanks again for watching. Hopefully you guys have a good holiday. I'm going to try my best to get as much stuff out before the holiday rolls around. But you guys have a good holiday. Hopefully you get nice Christmas gifts or whatever you guys celebrate. And stay safe, my ninjas. I'm going to see you in the next one. Peace.